right, I think we are ready to rock and roll. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you for signing up, for spending your lunch hour with us today. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events for Startup Junkie. For those of you who may not be familiar with Startup Junkie, we are a mission-driven organization based in Northwest Arkansas that exists to empower innovators and entrepreneurs. We do that largely in two ways, through one-on-one consulting and then events, and everything we do is absolutely no cost to the entrepreneur. So whether you have an idea written on the back of a napkin or an operating business with $25 million in revenue, we're here to serve you as best we can. And today we're excited to have Cindy Gaddis present today. Cindy is a friend of Startup Junkie, pretty good at trivia too when it comes to our virtual happy hours. Cindy is a U.S. Army veteran and co-author of the most recent Veterans Business Guide and Vice President of Business Development for Advanced Technological Solutions. She has over 15 years experience within the public sector, from marketing, business development, capture and proposal development to contract and project management. She is a PMI.org certified project management professional, National Contract Management Association, and Association of the United States Army lifetime member. She's led both large and small teams to pursue, win, and successfully execute over $1 billion in federal contracts. We're so grateful to have you, Cindy.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. You guys are always so much fun, and I am happy to share the little bit that may help others in what they do. So seeing others be a success is very much what I like to do. So one of the things that I always, it's important for teams to know about is, why do you do what you do? So it's important to understand why people do what they do, understand their perspective, and it might be a little bit different than your own. What drives and matters to people most is really the basis for all human interaction, whether you're remote or face-to-face. So on your screen, you see a picture of some Army-looking dudes, right? Camo, weapons, all that. This is my why. So these guys and many like them. So I come from a long line of veterans. My grandfather lost an eye in World War II. My stepdad and uncle both served in Vietnam. I married a veteran. Well, actually, I married two different ones twice, and I happen to be one. So the defense of our nation and equipping the warfighter is something I'm pretty passionate about. So I work for a defense contractor. So as you go out and lead teams, it's important to understand why you do what you do and why they do what they do. So the team matters, really. So I think Caleb mentioned everything on the screen, and the only purpose is to say, hey, have a little comfort that I might have a little bit of ideas that you hadn't heard before, maybe not, but have a little bit of experience. But probably the coolest thing that people want to hear more about is how I lost 100 pounds, climbed Mount Fuji, and ran 3 marathons leading up to my 50th birthday. So if y'all want to ask questions on that too, feel free. People are usually like, wait, that's way more interesting than this other stuff. So anyway, I'm kind of passionate about that as well. So in the big picture of managing remote teams, first off, this is an interactive series. I'm going to ask you questions. So of course, feel free to ask me questions. Go off mute. The first thing I like to tell people when we're managing a remote team, show your camera. It helps people understand that you are real. You're a real person over there. You might be eating lunch. You might have the dogs barking and the kids pulling on your coattail, but it introduces an element of humanity that people need, especially now. And you can also tell a lot about people's background. You can get a feel for what matters most to people. I mentioned climbing Mount Fuji. 2 pictures behind me. I took those pictures live in front of Mount Fuji one year and climbed it the next. I asked my mother to paint them, so they're kind of special to me. So it matters. I see Morgan has a beautiful painting behind her. it probably means something to her. And I see Taylor has a painting behind him as well. So this can tell you a little bit about the people you're talking to and managing remote teams. So just a little visual there. Oh, look, Caleb's all business, whiteboard. So very cool. So feel free to ask questions, unmute, jump in, click the little raise your hand feature or what have you as we go along. You're not going to bother me with interrupting or derail my train too far that I can't get back on. At least I hope not. Anyway, so thank you, Morgan. So first, in managing remote teams, you're really managing relationships because relationships matter. In the big scheme of things, no matter what you're doing, it boils down to relationships. Starting a new business, growing a business, managing a team, leading a team. At the heart of it, we're relationship people. We're human. And that is the first and foremost critical nature of leadership, whether you're leading or following or on a team in any capacity. So we're going to talk about 3 elements that I think is really important when managing remote teams. As a certified project manager, there's a communications plan, and there's a whole lot of other things that go with it, but we're going to focus on the communications plan, some technology, and really a factor that a lot of people don't focus on is expectation management. So we'll talk a little bit about those. And again, feel free to jump in if you have questions. So comms, technology, and expectations. So first, in talking about managing remote teams, it's the foundation upon which everything really is based is the communications plan. So we're going to focus on technology and expectations for that. But first, you have a communications plan. Does the team have the tools to succeed, and do they know how to use them? You can have the tools and then not know how to use them. And then what should the team expect from you, and what should you expect from your team? So we'll go through each one of these. The PIM box, which is, if you're familiar with PMP, it's basically the Bible for the PMP professional. So it describes the different tools and techniques that you can use to basically manage the communications on a project. Tools and technologies, methods, skills, information systems, reporting, interpersonal team skills and meetings, all these different things. So we're really going to focus on technology and probably the interpersonal team skills. So first, I want to ask you, my first question to you, does your organization have a communications plan? So Caleb, we'll start with you since you're right next to me on the little Brady Bunch box.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, we have a strategy for how we communicate to the people we want to interact with on largely social media. Are you referring to those outside of our organization or within the organization?
Both, and that's a good point. We'll talk about those internal and externals as well.
I think we do, just to chime in since I work with Caleb, even though you didn't ask me.
You were next.
Happy to pass the baton.
I think we have for sure, like, so we have several different stakeholders that we work with, the main one being our clients, and we definitely have like a communication strategy. Like this is, you know, what we want them to know about our organization, and then this is sort of the model that we follow for consulting meetings. And then internally we have, you know, different like tools and, you know, channels and groups for communications. So I think in terms of like a plan though, what do you mean by plan?
We'll get to that. We'll
Okay.
get to that. That's good for now. So the first thing in asking, do you have a communications plan, is maybe knowing what it is. So we'll work on that. So different organizations have different styles and different types of communications based on their experience. If you happen to work with the Department of Defense, what you can expect is vastly different than what you would expect in a corporate environment. Probably one of the reasons that I typically migrate to defense organizations, working with the military, Department of Defense, and the warfighter, just because I get it. I get the lingo, you know, the military mindset. So the first non-military organization for whom I worked was really difficult just because they had an entirely different kind of lexicon that I had a hard time following, just like, well, they weren't clear. You had to guess who you should CC and who you shouldn't, and who should you include on that email, and how much should you write, and so many different things. It was difficult. Military, it's kind of cut and dry. They even have a little link here, how to write email with military precision. And at the basic, I'll tell you, it's very simple. It's like an idiot-proof guide to writing. Summarize everything you're about to say it all, and then at the end, tell them again. That's it. That is the basic foundation of successful military writing, because maybe they just assume that we're awfully slow, but it's effective, so we do that. And also, what's the culture of the organization? Are they really straight-laced? Are they kind of laid back, or what have you? So it's important to know that as well. So how you communicate on a project, which has a finite start and end date, versus in day-to-day operations, internally and externally, is also different. So I spent the last 6 weeks running a project, had 20 different people across 4 different companies and 5 different states. So this project lasts 6 weeks long. You don't have the luxury of norming and storming and all of those team building things. And it's getting less and less frequent that you get to go with that model. It's getting where you show up ready to work and you don't know anybody. So again, in the virtual environment, getting face-to-face is important. I mean, granted, we only have half a body instead of the full body communications, nonverbal communications going on, but it's still important. But we met virtually at least once every day for 6 weeks, and we had a very specific desired outcome, and just to further the project. And it was very successful. And most of the people had never worked together before. And man, we became fast friends. And when that project was ended, we kept calling each other, because it's like, wow, man, I've talked to you every single day for 6 weeks. I kind of missing you now, How did that thing that you had to do with your dog work out, and is your mom okay now? So you get to know people rather quickly in this kind of environment. Day-to-day operations are a little bit different. You meet with them and you move the needle, but like basically in our organization, we come together once a week, have a team powwow, say what's going on. We have any areas where might have some synergies on things that we're working on that might be helpful to one another to know or get input or what have you. So things like that, just understanding the different types of communications there. And technologies. So from a technology perspective, I'll give you the example first, right up front. So in about 2013, I became right before I started my first consulting company, I got a job with a DC-based company. They loved that I was very passionate about all geeky things. And so they're like, yes, we want you to come work for us remotely. I lived in Texas and they were in DC. And it was an ideal fit. The culture was good. We thought along the same lines. We were willing to just, have the same mindset, and everything was great, except for one tiny thing. While they were a technology company and mindset, they didn't actually have the technological capabilities to operate in a remote world at this time. And this is 2013. So I think I was there for a month or two, basically found them my replacement and said, you're not there yet. Here's one of my friends in DC who can help you do what I do, but they're co-located. They can meet with you face to face. They just weren't set up for the remote thing. And I know when COVID hit, a lot of companies were just blown away. They had no idea how to handle this. Well, it just so happened that the type of company my organization does is high-tech things, working for the Department of Defense and top secret arenas. So we were already very mobile and a number of stuff. We didn't have to be co-located with the facilities until, we need to get to a skiff or things like that. So it was seamless. The organization for whom we work was already ready to, they were contingency planning. If something goes wrong, how do we sustain operations? Because it just so happens they're responsible for the entire global grid of communications for the entire Department of Defense. Kind of important that they be able to pivot, if you will. So they already had that plan. We already had that plan. But most companies, they didn't. They weren't used to operating remotely. So on one aspect, you have the element of people just not being comfortable in front of the camera, or, people not being comfortable working by themselves for long periods of time without other people all around them to say, hey, how do you do this or that? So there's a lot of different aspects there, but having the right tools that are available, and then having access to them, and then knowing how to use them. You've got to have the internet connectivity, obviously. Then you've got to have, let's say you have Zoom. I don't know how to use Zoom. I know how to use Skype. And if you work with more than a couple of different companies, you are going to face every single platform there is, whether it's Skype, Teams, GoToMeeting, Citrix, WebEx. I mean, there's just so many different ones, and they're kind of similar, but kind of not in some ways too. And some have their little things that are weird. But unless you're a geek like me, you're going to hate it. You're absolutely going to hate it. And I'll give you an example. One of my pals had served in the military for 30 plus years. He had been a general officer. He had people, an entire entourage of people doing stuff for him. So he went to work for a defense contractor because it's what he knew. And so going from a military to this work cube life environment, green suit to suit and tie, was already difficult. COVID hit not too long after that. And man, this poor guy about went crazy. One, he's a talker, not a techie. He's used to talking to people, and he had nobody. And he had to manage his own IT stuff. And he's one of these people, he's like, I'll try it 3 times and then I'm just throwing the device away. So it was really hard on people who aren't naturally geeky, if you will. And so maybe the everybody 40 and below is kind of naturally techie. I'm just an old geek, I think, because most people my age are just like, I don't do all that. I don't know why it is. I just love it. But so making sure that people of all generations can use the tools is really important too. So it's not that they're incapable of doing their job. Getting past the technology is gonna be a problem. If you're 40 and below, please feel some kind of empathy for people who are older, that they've had somebody else doing that for them, and they've never had to have their own self IT care before. Push come to shove, if I can't handle it, my husband's also a geek. He can handle it, right? Okay, I'm tired of dealing with this issue. You go, call the IT providers or whatever. So you got to have the tools. Some people didn't have cameras. The Air Force had made the monumentally stupid decision to remove the camera functionality from all of their laptops. They couldn't buy them without cameras, so they had to remove the functionality ostensibly for security purposes. Well, huge mistake, because now they needed that camera to be able to function remotely. So instant messaging, it's like hollering over the cube. Man, I have all of my people on the team, whether it's in Teams or some other method of instant communication, it is ideal. Excuse me. So that you can just say, hey, that meeting that we were just on, I missed what Bob said about this. And you got it. So you're like, hollering over the cube, just, through instant messenger. No need to pick up a phone. Everybody has to stop everything when you pick up a phone. But you can send a message and get back to work. And at some point in their day, they're going to get around to it, right? So it's really important. And then collaboration. Another effort that I'm working on with a really large company. And there's probably going to be 40 or so people working on it. Again, they're going to be all over the United States, not the globe this time, but all over the United States. So the portals of information sharing and where we're collaborating on different documents is really important. One of the first things to really understand when you're putting together teams is how you're going to collaborate together, how you're going to work on things together. So as you're moving forward in the remote environment, it's not enough just to say, okay, here's what you use and here's what you do and here's how you do it. It's okay, here's the rules of engagement for how we're going to work on these documents. Here's the configuration management kind of thing, the naming conventions and where you can go and the breadcrumbs, and have all of that clearly laid out and clearly communicated to the team so that people aren't, where's this or where's that? And it's a constant. People find that they're spending more time searching for things to work on instead of doing the work that they need to be doing. So communicating this early on is really helpful. Making sure that your folks have connectivity. If you consistently see one person who can't connect, find other alternatives. So I've been working remotely since about 2013. Made the decision to leave the cube life because I had a small child, unruly small child, who is now an unruly 12-year-old child, so still working it, still being remote. And what I've found is you have to have multiple methods of connectivity. So our house has two networks, has my business network, and then it has the kids streaming Netflix and Amazon and everything else, because I don't like cable TV, stream anything we want to watch. But then my phone also turns into a hotspot. So I've got levels of redundancy in my network capability. And push comes to shove, we have a generator. We turn it on, plug in my ups to all of the equipment in cabin loft to make sure that I have connectivity. Now, if the towers are down, that's a different story. And the absolute last resort is driving to the nearest McDonald's or Starbucks, whoever has free Wi-Fi or whatever. And that's only a limited solution because of the type of work I do. I can't just like find the open public free network to do certain things. So that's like the last resort. So your team should have a backup plan for how you're going to be connected, stay connected, and make sure that they can do that as well. Any questions on any of those, or any ideas from anyone on how your organization has solved some of those problems?
In the chat, looks like Clay had made a note about time zone differences as far as the topic of collaborating. Said he had a team in India where the time difference was 10.5 to 11.5 hours difference.
Yeah, I've run across that too. I was I spent a month in Japan and I was still working. And so one of the things I had to do was in Outlook, you could have multiple time zones listed on your calendar. So one time zone was the Japan time zone, and the other time zone was Central time zone, and the other time zone was Eastern time zone, because I had to operate in all three of these. And so I would, okay, where am I right now? I'm in Japan, so it means it's this time, and I could just like look across. And I'm not doing work in Japan right now, but I still do the same thing because I work with people on the West Coast and the East Coast. And so those are really huge time differences sometimes. And I'm the world worst. People always are like, man, you're really smart. Why can you not get this time change down? I said, I don't know. I know it's just a matter of counting numbers and remembering, but I am bad at it. Don't like it at all. So I just have this little cheat thing. Probably one of the funnest things was the first defense contractor I worked for. We had clocks for every time zone that we worked in. We worked in Baghdad and Kuwait, and so we had all these different clocks to make sure everybody knew what time it was, so we wouldn't be calling in the middle of the night. So my hat's off to you for working in India. But set your computer up to show that time zone on your calendar. That'll help. Any other questions out there? All right, I will ask Morgan, what kind of tools do you guys use? Teams, Skype, Zoom.
Carrier pigeons, smoke signals, trained foxes, all of them. We really do. I mean, I think we text, we have Slack, we use Zoom, we use email, but it's interesting, like, because we kind of compartmentalize, like, I only Slack certain things with team members, you know, and then some things we email and some things we text about. So we kind of, you know, like, use a scattered approach, and I just typically have all of the things open on my screen at all times to catch any possible channel of communication.
Oh wow, we try to narrow ours down to just a little bit more, but I am familiar with Slack too. It is a really good app. I
think one thing that's interesting is that we have a multi-generational workplace, and so there are different, like, comfort levels with utilizing different means of communications, and so I think that's something that, you know, has to be taken into consideration too. Is, like you were saying earlier, there's somewhat of a learning curve for some, and then there are some people that just want to use everything, or, you know, only want to communicate on Slack. And that's something, we're a small organization, so we can kind of know, like, oh, if I Slack so and so, they're going to see it next week, so I need to email them. Or if I text so and so, like, if you text me, I'm probably going to get back to you in like 48 hours, so email is better. So we kind of just have that, like, internal, you know, awareness.
Well, that is a perfect segue into managing expectations. So knowing what people can expect from you and what they can expect from the organization, et cetera. So I'll give you two examples, one pre-COVID and one post-COVID, and it's entirely different scenario. So I worked for a missile defense contractor pre-COVID, and every single call had to be background silent. You had to be in a professional environment. You had to have your camera on if at all possible, and you had to be professionally attired at all times, and no kids, no dogs, no nothing. If you've got issues, you better have them resolved before you get on the phone. And the leadership of the organization were pretty clear on it too. I mean, they made it a big deal. Hey, I heard somebody sound like somebody was on Starbucks one day. Oh no, we can't have that. You know, that's not allowable. Those of you who are working in remote environments had better pretend like you're, you know, in your own office, have your own office. And there was this sense of fairness and justice. Other people had to get up and go through the beautification process and haul it into the cube every day. And so this was, I guess, was their way of saying, we need you to toe the line in some way too, have to deal with some of the same pain and all that. Post-COVID, again, still a Department of Defense contractor. They do network automation, but they have more people remote, and everything's a little bit more laid back. You can be on your camera or not. You can have dogs barking, you can have kids screaming, you can have mayhem in the background. There was this one call I was on, and I kid you not, there were executives from NASA and all other, you know, big shot places. And one guy says, hold on one second, my dog's puking, and hit mute and took off to care for his puking dog. Another time, you know, an executive shows up and a toddler is like, mom, 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 you know, yanking on her sleeve. And you can see the facial reactions of everybody on the team of, hey, this is a human experience. You know, we get professional world, but we're kind of going through a tough time now. Grace is in abundance. Latitude cut short. People wearing hoodies to work is cool. You know, I won't show you my little fuzzy piggy slippers, but yeah, I wear little fuzzy piggy slippers to work. You know, this is a regular thing. I do have pants on today, not, you know, the boxer shorts, the hearts, if you've seen those before. But it's just a different environment that lets people be real in a way that they've never been real before. This is my home, and you can put up a virtual background, for the super professional things, but let it down every now and then. Let people on the other side see that you're a person too. And that bit of humanity goes a long way in growing that team remotely. And then, so I told you about those, pre and post COVID. I bet all of you guys have experienced something like that, maybe not to the extreme of the puking dog, but still. Anybody have any stories they want to share of their remote COVID life? These are the great stories. I love them if you have one.
So I'll throw one out there. I was talking to a guy, and I won't say what company it is, but you all would know the company, across the country, and he was wearing a t-shirt that said beer company. And I thought that was funny. And I've been on interviews with people who are wearing hoodies, and which I don't have a problem with, but I just thought the beer company label on this t-shirt was unusual, especially when you're interviewing with somebody.
Yeah, that was an official interview, and he had that on?
Yeah.
Did he get the job?
No. Or rather, I was interviewing with him, meaning I didn't get the job. But his t-shirt said beer company, which, again, I'm not that picky, but I thought, that's probably not real appropriate to be interviewing somebody wearing a t-shirt like that.
No, it is a mutual interview, right? You're interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you, and kind of think, maybe I don't really work for this company after all. I like that. Thank you for sharing that story. And managing expectations, so know what they expect, and just like Morgan had said, as a leader in an organization, I make it clear to folks right off the bat. Here's my escalation policy, if you will. If you have a question and you need an urgent and immediate response, call me. If it cannot wait, call me. But only if I already have your phone number in my thing, because I don't answer calls that I don't know. Second, if it's more urgent, text me. I'll be very responsive to that. If it's something that can wait a day or two or three, email me. I'll get around to it. I said, and that's just about the way it goes. If it's something that can wait 2 or 3 days, don't bother texting me. Unless you just want to have a little chat about it, or something, and it's not terribly important. So that helps people understand where you come from. If you work, that's really important to do with people that you interface with on a regular basis, if not constant. Any one of my LinkedIn friends, they'll hit me up on LinkedIn, and then say, hey, can I schedule time to talk? Sure. LinkedIn is a great way to do that. That's my professional network. I chat with a lot of folks there. If I want to talk to my kids, I had to learn how to use Snapchat, because 3 of my 4 children are technically classified as adults, although I use that term loosely. So they were on Snapchat, so I learned how to use Snapchat just to interact with them, right? Instagram, they really love that. So guess what I had to go do? Learn Instagram. I originally got on Facebook for the kids, but that was a few years ago, and now only old people use Facebook, apparently. I did not know this. I'm 50. I'm old. I'm good with that. I can handle it. So these would probably be my internal communications, my family, people I work with on a regular basis. Externally, our customers, they have different expectations. If you're emailing anybody within the federal government, maybe state government too, you can't put any hyperlinks, or you can't put any graphics. It's got to be almost pure text email and get to the point. They don't have a lot of time, and they're probably not going to respond. So you should count on a pattern of call, email, call. They are sometimes on LinkedIn, not too often, but if they are, and they can often communicate there too. But again, knowing how you work internally and communicate, and then how you work externally to communicate. And then once everybody understands that, then continue to manage expectations. If you have one person who comes to you and says, like, for the longest time, I was still talking to my children on Facebook, and then they had to tell me, hey, Mom, we've moved over to Snapchat. Facebook is for old people. Oh, okay, thank you for managing my expectations. I know if I want to talk to you, I need to go and do this. So I did. Okay, more on expectations. This is really about in the remote environment. It really should be applicable no matter if you're remote or working face to face. But empathy is really important. So if you're over 60, you're used to kind of a authoritarian kind of leadership. Authority, somebody says, hey, you go do this. If you're dealing with people who are much younger generation, they're not too jiggy with that. They want to be part of an organization to collaboratively make things happen, right? It's not a boss manager kind of scenario anymore. It's a team environment, and it's really important to understand that. And it requires a lot of empathy. You need to understand where people are coming from and their feelings and their perception on things. You don't have to agree with them. You just have to understand where they're coming from, right? I remember I attended this one U of A event. They were talking about diversity in the political environment or whatever. And I got to tell you, I was arguably the most conservative person on the call, but I could listen to people with other perspectives that weren't my own and learn something. And likewise, they were able to do the same thing. So it's really important to know you're generally working with a whole bunch of different people, and this is a good thing. I have a saying that if everybody's exactly the same, somebody's unnecessary. So nobody likes everybody being exactly the same, or I don't. I like differences. Listen more than you talk. While I am talking nonstop right here, right now in my everyday life, I really try not to. I try to listen to people. I ask questions. I call it my, look at people when you're talking to them, listen to what they're saying, and listen so well that you can ask questions about what they just told you, right? And if you follow that nice little clean LLA kind of technique, and for people like me, I like to talk. You know, I could probably just do it all day, not really share anything important, but I also like to listen. I like to hear what other people have to say because I learn more like that. And then the verbal, nonverbal. So when Taylor first came on, he was eating lunch. I love that. He was smiling, and I could tell he was enjoying his lunch. He had a happy face. Morgan smiles all the time. Caleb does too. And the other Morgan as well. You get nonverbal feedback. Hey, you guys are generally looking at me. You're listening. You're like, oh yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. That's why I like the value of the camera. Really get to see where people are. If somebody's looking at you like this and kind of, they're not getting what I'm saying. So I may want to like ask a question of them, right? Okay. If you wish to know the mind of a man, listen to his words. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, I guess his last name. Anyway, really important. And this is my favorite one from Theodore Roosevelt. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So that one is really, really good. I remember that one of the best lessons I've ever had in listening better, I was having a nice little pity party over some trivial silliness and was pouring my heart out to somebody I didn't know very well. You know, we'd been like Facebook friends or what have you. And about 5 minutes into the conversation, I was like, how are you? How's everything going? Well, my wife has cancer and we've been going through this battle. And I'm like, what? Here I am having this trivial little thing and you're facing this major battle. Well, I felt like that tall, but I learned a lot from that. And I always want to find out where people are before I ever open my mouth. let's find out what's going on with their lives before I really start, unloading my stuff. It's also an area of weakness of mine, I think, empathy, in terms of seeing where people are. If you tell me what's wrong, like I've had people who are sick, my family members know this about me. If you are sick, hurt, bleeding, I can almost feel your pain. I am an empathetic person. Listening has been something I've worked on a little bit more. And if it's an area of weakness for you as a leader, I would highly recommend getting involved with the Emotional Network. It's called EQ.org. It's a 6 Seconds network, if you've heard of them. They have been a great resource for emotional intelligence, how to become smarter with where people are coming from. And it's been a real weakness of mine, because most people has the intuition to see where people are coming from, right? And just kind of getting it. I lack that skill. So being completely oblivious to people beyond facial expressions, if you're smiling, I can get it, I can read that. And, if you're really mad, I can probably see that. But any nuances, I'll completely miss it. So that's been a valuable resource for me, and I would highly recommend others go there as well. So you guys know that I was in the Army, and really liked it. One of my mentors, Darren Hardy, I don't know if you guys have heard of him or not, really good guy. He says that work-life balance is a myth, and you will give your time and attention to the things that needs the most attention at that time. And it's proven right. For example, I'd mentioned the 6 weeks project that we worked on for 6 weeks, and then it got the majority of my time and attention to the tune of about 14 hours a day. So for 6 weeks, my husband and my youngest son, 12-year-old son, didn't get to see a whole lot of me. I was buried in it. But now the project is done, and I'm working on, I'm still working and doing my job and different things, but I have a deliberate focus to read a book with my 12-year-old, and my husband's reading it with us too. It's called The Compound Effect, basically trying to teach the kid that making small changes can have a big impact over time. Like I'd mentioned before, losing a lot of weight, climbing Mount Fuji, running a marathon, all these principles are based on that. And I thought, how cool would it be if I could teach my 12-year-old something that took me 50 years to learn? That would be a very powerful thing for him. So I thought, hey, let's do that. So that's where my focus is now, helping this young man learn good habits. So the goal of this work-life balance, and this is important when you're leading your team to kind of understand that. And I shared this. This is from the Army Chief of Staff, General McConville. Great guy, has great leadership skills, and he has a focus on people first that is just unimaginable. But he says the goal of work-life balance has driven the Army Chief of Staff to ensure that the Army keeps people first. And so when he was a major, he saw something that really upset him. In his words, pissed him off. Okay, that's what he said. He said he was with the 25th Infantry Division at the time, and soldiers were participating in an exercise called the Cobra Gold. And it was an annual training event that they did, and they held it with the U.S. and Thai Armed Forces. And at the same time, a captain in another brigade was getting ready for the exercise, but he was about to become a dad. And they had an opportunity to send that captain back to be there for the birth of his kid, but the brigade commander wouldn't let him go back. And he just thought it was tragic. And he said that when they were flying to the exercise, somebody announced over the intercom that the captain had just become the father of a baby boy. That's how he learned about it, is on his way over there. And he said he was furious. He goes, I wasn't even in that brigade, and he made a pledge right then and there that I would never let that happen on my watch. and or any unit that he's in. And he meant it too. He and his wife came up with this work-life balance and said, this is the guidance that they gave all of their people, that you have to have an understanding of what matters most at the time, what's going on. If you're in the middle of war and your kid has an appointment at school, probably not vital for you to come out of the battlefield to go to an appointment at a school or to see your kid practice in band. But if you're on a major deployment and you have a major one-time life event, your child is getting married, graduating, any one of like a one-time major event, then maybe it can wait. The major deployment can wait. Births, deaths, immediate family, yeah, that's a vital thing that you need to be there for. Maybe even come away from war for. So he used this and shared it with me, well, everybody in his command for years, obviously, to say, hey, if you have a hard time deciding what matters and what doesn't, here's a little idiot-proof guide to help you out. And so he has passed it around, and it's been wildly effective. So any questions on that? All right. Well, that is about it for me. So I want you guys to look at this picture, and I want you to identify every method of communications represented. You have to come off mute. Give me your verbal feedback.
Pointing. Gestures.
Pointing. So that would be a nonverbal, right? Nonverbal. What else?
They've got walkie-talkies.
Yep. There's a radio right there on Creel's slot.
And they have names, so there's written communication.
Yes, written communication.
Like those guys.
I see the what?
Body language.
Body language, right. Give me an example of one bit of body language. This is actually something that really irritates me. I don't like, but it is very communicative.
The guy on the left looks like he's actively listening.
Right. The guy on the right, less so. But they're not looking at the guy either. They're not looking at the guy, and they're not looking to where he's pointing. So I'm just like, are they listening so intently? Or are they, not getting it yet? And then some of these guys on the back, I'm not sure what they're doing, but effective communications. They got a lot of tools that they're using there too. I know there's a notebook in there somewhere that they're going to pull out and start scribbling on any second. That always works out. All right. Any questions? Other questions than that?
Morgan had one in the chat. She asked, what are some suggestions you have to facilitate employee engagement and motivation in a remote environment?
Staying incommunicado and understanding the person. So we have one person. She doesn't work directly for me, but she's a real outgoing kind of person, like I am, and she's been working to get her PMP certification. And so I've reached out to her, under the, hey, let me help you out with this if you need it, and offered my availability to her, basically, to mentor her through this certification process, and gave her some tips. So people that when you understand that, hey, this person is a really outgoing personality, really loves people, and will probably need more interaction than others, make it a point to do that, whether they work directly for you or not. The people that she works for, they're not like that. They're very laid back. They could be fine not ever talking to people. They're just techie geeks who'd like to go in and, just stay in the computer all day and not really have a conversation. So make it a point to reach out to those that do and kind of listen to what's going on in their lives, Just be there. That's probably the best advice. But you have to know your team to do that. I'm still talking to that team that I led for 6 weeks with 20 people and across 5 different states, I still communicate with those folks. Some of them are feeling kind of isolated right now, and whatever business that you're in, it's all about relationships. And once the purpose for having met and gotten together has passed, typically the connection doesn't. You know, you remain friends. You connect on LinkedIn. You say happy birthday and congratulations on your award, or you know, and if you're leaving the doors of communication open so that people understand, hey, you can always talk to me. If there's nobody else on the planet, probably talk to me. So that would be my best advice. Any others?
I just wanted to build a little bit off of what you said, kind of based on some of the things that we do. Our probably most active Slack channel is dad jokes. And so just having something kind of baked in that I don't know, keeps everyone talking to each other, not necessarily about things that are super serious. I don't know, keeps that, and gifts seem to keep people engaged.
Oh, I like that. I do. And happy hours, those virtual happy hours. I'm being a social being and business development. Before COVID, I found myself traveling a lot, speaking a lot, doing different conferences and engagements, and getting to be around people often enough that living in a cabin in the woods on 90 acres in central Arkansas was not a big deal. I could handle it, right? I wasn't too terribly isolated. I'd get out and go get my peopling done and come home and be fine. COVID kind of shut that down. And so it's like, okay, I will sign up for any virtual event that comes down the pike that has people talking to each other about anything pretty much. And so I've learned a lot of stuff because of that. Hey, here's my people need for the day, whatever. So find ways around that. But you knowing how your people work, that's a great idea, Taylor. Thank you for that. Any other brilliant ideas out there? Or, like I say, I'll give you ideas and I'll let you determine if it's brilliant or not. All right, well, that's all I've got for you, Caleb.
Well, we appreciate you. That was great. And I'd like to thank everybody for participating. This is recorded, as I said earlier, and so I'm going to distribute this out to everybody who's signed up so that you can rewatch it if you want, share it with friends and colleagues. So we appreciate everybody for being here. Cindy, again, thank you so much for this awesome presentation. I hope we can get you scheduled for another webinar soon.
Sure.
Good to see everybody.
All right.
Have a great
See you guys
day.
later.
So much.
You too.
Bye. Thank you guys.
Bye.